All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of BlockHash Exploring the Blockchain, episode 272. Really getting up there now. Today we have Eduard, Kotysh, founder of Solidified, on the show to talk about why it's important to keep your blockchain secure, the methods they go about using, and the importance of the auditing process. A lot we'll dive into. Eduard, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me. It's a privilege to be here.
It's a privilege to have you. It's going to be a fun conversation. Really curious to learn more about, what you guys are doing and kind of dive into the details. Before we do, tell me and the audience a bit more about yourself. What's your story? How did you find yourself, in this world of crypto and blockchain? And what was kind of like your path, your trajectory to get to Solidified?
Yeah, sure. So I started building complex distributed systems back in 2010. That's my background, it's primarily computer science, and walked up the chain to director of engineering for a robotics company out of MIT and started getting tired of the whole politics in the corporate world. So try to find a problem to solve. And along the way, in 2015, a friend of mine from UK just became a millionaire by investing in Bitcoin. And so he kind of urged me to start looking into this world and said, hey, this got legs. You need to look at it beyond just an investment. And so I started looking at Ethereum. Just from a computer science point of view, it was really interesting to me. Started building my first smart contract and quickly realized that there's a lot of problems that haven't been solved in this space at the time. And one of them that piqued my interest was cybersecurity, that these systems that were being built to be unsupervised, and there was literally no one who could verify your code with you and help you audit it and make sure that it runs as intended. And so that's how I entered the space, and we started Solidified.
Awesome. So it was an investor that, piqued your interest, got you to look a bit deeper into the space and consider the fact that there's a lot of on the grounds building type of work and security that needs to happen and take place. And that's the part that interested you the most.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the technical aspect of it was interesting, right? So the fact that you could run logic on these smart contracts and do what you want in a decentralized way, at the time it was really novel and a cool idea. So I really wanted to get into that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And a big need for it in the space today. So many hacks going on, so many issues with different, Web3 revolutionary blockchains coming out, and a lot of bugs need to get squashed. So what is Solidified, maybe in a nutshell? Like, how would you summarize it, and what's like the goal, like the mission that you guys are going after?
Right. So the problem was when I wrote my first smart contract back in back in 2016, I was trying to find somebody who could verify it with me, who could do a security audit, because I was new at the time to this world, and there were basically two options at the time. One, you could go to Reddit, and there were all these strange people who you don't know and were telling you, I could do a review with you for X ETH or a certain amount of dollars. And, there's a big challenge of trust. Like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know how competent they are. So that's not a solution. And the other solution for kind of big enterprises that were entering this world at the time was to go to the only company that existed for security audits at this time, which was OpenZeppelin. And they were charging an arm and a leg for security audit. It was over $100,000. And so if you're a new venture who just had a great idea and haven't raised any money yet, there was literally no a good way for you to verify security of your contracts, security of your system. And so we wanted to come in and disrupt that and change that and make it basically more accessible to newcomers, projects who are new, who haven't raised money yet. Second issue was transparency. There was no transparency in the whole auditing process, so we wanted to bring transparency to the published completed audit reports, so that the users can judge for themselves the risk with the system that exists, so that the new auditors coming into the field can learn from that. And third, there was a shortage of talent, so we wanted to train additional auditors. There was just a shortage of really good quality auditors at the time. And so, in the process, Solidified came along and tried to solve these issues and establish a standardized process for security audits that really ensures consistent quality project to project, just across the board.
What does that standardized process kind of look like that you guys have formulated, and why do you think it's important, and does it differentiate from other, auditing processes out there?
Right. So that's a big loaded question there. So I think it's important to understand for especially for anyone who's just entering the blockchain security world that or looking at their first security audit, that blockchain security is a highly cross-functional field, right? So you have a big chunk of it is decentralized finance, and so you have to understand how liquidity markets work, options work. At the same time, you have to be a strong systems architect, understand how dependable systems interact together, how upgrade mechanisms work. Then you have to have computer science and that background to, understand logic, computer language, more complicated concepts that can exist like staking rewards, and you have to have a mind of a hacker. Right. So as in any cybersecurity project, you're trying to break things in order to secure it. So it's hard to find all those traits in one person. Right. So it's a very cross-functional world. So typically in the past, before Solidified came along, there was one person who claimed to have all this knowledge and tried to verify that all of that is copacetic. But when we came along, we realized that was not reasonable to do. So we put together a very high quality talent team that is composed of traditional computer scientists, economists, professional economists, and mathematicians who can do these threat modeling exercises, and really, have all these check boxes checked. And so that was a big thing, right? So this subject matter expertise was a big thing that Solidified could bring to the table. And so for every security audit that we did, we put at least 3 people on each audit, and so that we could check each one of these checkboxes. So then that's just the people who actually do the review. The process itself, like in any cybersecurity project, it really depends on security in depth, right? So meaning, for those who don't know, is that you're trying to do multiple layers of security, not just one, to make sure that the project is secure at the end. So, there's an overall process. You do a security audit, then you give your initial findings to the client. The client fixes some of them, maybe not all of them, and gives it back to you. You do a second security audit to make sure that they didn't introduce any new issues and that they fixed existing ones. And many companies say, well, that's it. At the end of that, that's it. And so we Solidified at the time also added the bug bounty program to the mix. So bug bounty program is essentially a program where you put your code up for a certain amount of time with incentives to find bugs, right? So a company can pay X thousand amount of dollars if you found a critical or a major or a minor bug. And bug bounties, they sort of accomplished a different aspect of this game, right? So it's not the same as security audit, but it's a really good complement to it. Because in the bug bounty, the hackers are really, or good actors who are trying to earn money, they're really focused on finding a bug rather than making sure this overall system is secure. So during phase one, during an audit, we make sure that the system is secure the best we can. And during phase two, the bug bounty, we kind of open it up to a wider audience to make sure that there's no more bugs left, right? So at that point, they're highly incentivized to find any remaining issues. And as a layer 3, we highly recommend, especially for some complex systems, to go and get insurance cover. This is something that a lot of companies forget to do. There's great companies out there like Nexus Mutual who provide smart contract cover. They don't really call it insurance for legal reasons, but it's the same thing essentially. They insure your smart contract against bugs, but in order for you to get that cover, you have to have gone through the proper due diligence process first to do that security audit, to put it in a bug bounty and show them that your project is actually decently secure before they could give you that cover. So that's a multi-step process that we really were trying to be behind. And in the middle of this, just the security audit part, there was a lot of innovations there from our side as well. So one innovation was we really tried to produce an unbiased result. So a lot of security auditors would work together on an audit and really try to find any issues or things that were not being followed as best practices together. And that often biases the other person that you're working with, and produces results that are not necessarily genuine. And so we made it sure that each auditor works independently, unbiased with their own devices before bringing them together into a consensus debrief meeting. So that was a big change from the standard process that was being done before. And we saw a better result after that. That's kind of a happy path that I've been describing so far, because there's times when a client gives you a project that's just really poorly written or poorly constructed. And so what we started doing is, in the early days, when we started doing a security audit and see that the project is just not properly designed, we would stop the audit, get back on the call with the client, and really advise them on the best practices of how to build the system before we continue with an audit. So those were some of the core components that we brought into the smart contract audit world.
It sounds like you guys got a lot of moving components and people involved, that eventually make it work. So you get a project and you have like a gauntlet almost of talent and expertise that it needs to go through before it gets your guys' final stamp of approval that it's clean and bug free. But at the same time, you mentioned that it don't always go well. There's a need potentially for insurance companies to be involved, or like you're saying, if it's not written well or there's issues with it, then with the code, then maybe there needs to be developers that need to get involved to help fix it. Have you guys built quite a network then of people that you can refer them to or outsource to, if you find that in those audits there are problems that they need to resolve? And you can say, okay, well, you need a developer because you got to fix this. You need to contact this person because you need to update that. I imagine you guys kind of got a bit of a Rolodex for that, right?
Yeah, so typically the companies we work with have their own development teams, and usually they know what they're doing. So we simply advise them on the best practices of the system architecture or best security practices. And when we talk to their development team, um, that we have an understanding. So they usually go back to a drawing board and come back with a better version. Um, I think in the early days, or for some of the smaller projects that we used to take, they didn't have a good developer. Didn't they outsourced the developer team that is no longer available. So in those cases, we tried to help them find someone who could help, who was competent.
How do you guys go about sourcing some of these auditors? I know there's a trustworthy aspect that's, really important as well. Do you have like a vetting process for that, or do you train them in-house, or what's kind of the path you go to get someone that's really good?
Yeah, that's a good question, because talent is a very important aspect in this space. Some of our auditors have been with us for 5+ years, and that's saying a lot, because most of the security auditing firms in the blockchain space haven't even been around for that long. And so originally we actually went to different Ethereum competitions, coding competitions, and I invited the winners of those competitions to work with Solidified. Um, you know, that sort of served as the base of the team that we started with originally back in 2016. Um, During that time, I spoke at a lot of conferences, and I also met a few people who were also either speakers about technical subjects. So, we had a chat, and one thing led to another, and we worked together afterwards. But later, we developed a more succinct process for vetting security auditors. So, now that we have veteran auditors, they're all computer scientists by trade. They've been in blockchain security for a number of years. It's not just like last year that they picked up Solidity and started trying to figure out what it is. Um, we take new auditors kind of under our wing who want to be with us, and take them on a couple audits and see how they do, um, and really trial them by fire, and throw them into the mix and see how they perform, see how they think through the issues that they find, see how they think through the systems that they're analyzing, and pick out the people who we believe are going to be the best.
Got it. It sounds like, quite a process to go through. I can't imagine. I know a lot of people have had issues hiring in the space for a long time, just trying to get developers and stuff. Obviously, it's changed a lot the last couple of years, but um, making a developer learn Solidity for the first time when they have all this prior knowledge and skills is sometimes not productive in this space. Kind of wraps around to the next question I had was, do you guys mostly focus on the Solidity code base and helping Ethereum based projects, or do you work with a variety of different blockchains out there with different standards?
Yeah, so Solidified brand that I started, they are focused on Ethereum-based projects. So really not just Ethereum, but EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine-based projects. That's a bit wider scope. Last year, my company got acquired by Oak Security, which is another blockchain security firm ran by my partners, Stefan and Philip. And they focus more on third generation blockchains. So we're talking about Solana, Avalanche, things like that, Terra ecosystem, Cosmosm. So they focus a bit on different blockchains, and it's great. That acquisition was a really great step for Oak Security because now with Solidified under their belt, they can focus kind of on both arms of the trade. With Solidified brand, they still do Ethereum-based audits, and with Oak Security brand, we do third-generation blockchain audits.
Do you want to expand out even more into some of those third gen blockchain projects and kind of take on more clients? Or do you want to focus mostly on Ethereum?
It's that's an interesting question because the majority of clients for Oak Security, is coming from third gen blockchains because it's a harder to find talent world. Not a lot of talented engineers who understand those aspects, those languages, those semantics of how those blockchains are constructed, how those networks work. But we still get a really good flow on Ethereum because that's still 90% of volume. And so I think it's really good to keep both of those avenues open. And we see what happens in the future.
Yeah, I imagine a large chunk of the demand though comes from the Ethereum ecosystem just because it's so big right now. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity if some of these other blockchains really get to be as big as Ethereum one of these days. There'll definitely be a good market share to grab. Can you talk, I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but can you talk again about this cross functionality with blockchain security and how some of all these different components come together to make, security around a blockchain important?
Yeah, sure. So, when we do a security audit, all sorts of different projects come to us, right? So they range really widely from something like a decentralized exchange, where you have to understand, decentralized finance, how exchange rates work, how rewards work, to games. Games like we audited a project for OpenSea, for example, and anything in the middle. Really, there's wallets, and so on. So we cater to a really wide variety of Ethereum projects, and because of that, we have to have talent who understands how to perform a variety of attacks, and these range from your typical security best practices attacks and economic attacks, right? So how can I upset the balance of the ecosystem such that I get rewarded more than I should, right? So a lot of these issues come from trying to upset the rewarding mechanism. How do you, maybe capitalize on a rounding error somewhere in order to borrow a lot of money and execute a flash loan attack and get paid millions of dollars, right? So there's a lot of economic analysis, economic modeling that's involved. Some of these issues stem, from people not implementing kind of traditional finance concepts properly in these decentralized systems, or not understanding these concepts in general. So, we can't just be cybersecurity experts. We have to also be economics standard experts as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point you bring up. Do you have people on the team that have strong economics backgrounds, or do you prefer to have a diverse set of opinions on a team that's working on a project? Because tokenomics is really important in terms of the long-term viability and the overall functionality and how a project works. You don't want that to break or cause the project to fail or to push the community away in any kind of instance. And I know there's a lot of different economic models and theories out there. Is there one that you guys stick with that you think works the best or that is applied to blockchain the best? or do you just try to button up whatever they want to work with?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the project. There's no like one economic theory that covers everything, right?
Mhm.
So it depends what they're building. If they're building some kind of liquidity market, depends what are they doing? Are they doing something cool, new, and innovative in how they're giving people rewards? Are they just copying an existing project, right? So a lot of these uh, uh, new players, all they do is they kind of fork an existing project and tweak a few variables and rebrand it and say, hey, we have something cool and new. And that's a big red flag very often. So we typically don't take projects like these. We have our own vetting mechanism. We don't take on every security audit. We take on audits that we believe are doing something cool, new, and innovative in the space. And to get back at your question, yeah, we actually have PhD economists on the team, and we make sure that they are added to those security audits that require this expertise.
So, of all the projects that you guys take on, whether they're DAOs or wallets or exchanges or games or whatever, I'm sure you guys have seen it all at this point. What would you say is generally the most easiest to work on, and what's the most difficult to work on, if you could pick?
Well, the easiest, that's easy, it's tokens, right? So a lot of companies create new tokens and they just need to do a quick security audit of a token. So those are probably the easiest. And that's where we start our new auditors on. We tag them along on these projects and just make sure that they can find all the basic things. Um, because there's standards that exist, and these tokens just basically need to follow those standards and make sure they're not, they're adding some custom logic. That's what we actually will audit on top of it. Most difficult projects probably have to be in a domain of something like zero knowledge proof, something very heavy mathematical. So, zero knowledge proofs are kind of a very interesting trend that's going on right now, where basically you're trying to prove a secret without revealing that secret. And it is being used in the blockchain space quite a lot. And a lot of protocols are using this. And you have to have subject matter experts in this area of security. So that would probably be something along those lines, like where it requires strong mathematical background or very deep economics background.
So, one more question before we start wrapping up. What's your guys' roadmap kind of look like going forward? Do you guys have plans for the rest of this year or going into early next year? Things that you guys are going to be doing that you didn't do before, like a new product or service in the auditing process, or are you guys going to any cool events, or is there anything you want to highlight or let people know about that you're excited for, that you think is important?
Yeah, sure. So we will be at DevCon coming up in Colombia. So if anybody's there who's watching, come and meet us there. It'd be a fun event. Both I will be there and my partner from Oak Security will be there as well. And as to the future, there's right now there's a lot of open issues in the space still. Yeah, as you can see, projects are still getting hacked left and right, right? So, why is that, right? So that I think that's a very important question to keep asking, because now the industry has matured, the security industry has matured, and the projects are doing better, right? So people are being held accountable for the state of their security, both financially and in terms of public reputation. Right? Resources like Rect Leaderboard exists now, where you can go and look at the recently wrecked projects in the space.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel, we have matured, but there's a couple of reasons why projects are still being hacked, right? So one, um, there's there's a very big interest in this space from hackers. Why? Because they would rather, what would they rather do? Would they rather go to traditional software project where they could have to break through, 3 VPNs and a complex, intruder monitoring system to get at the prize, or they can just go and bang against this contract that's available publicly on the blockchain and just find the right set of instructions to give it so that it just gives you millions of dollars. So of course there's a lot of bad actors that are focused on this space, not necessarily because it's easier, but because it's more available. And typically, that's hackers go where the money goes. So there's a ton of money in this space right now, and it's attracting a lot of bad actors as well. Second reason I would say is because there's no sort of guarantee that your auditor will do a good job, right? So incentives are often misaligned in this space. For example, auditor may get dinged for not doing a good job, but the company that he's supposed to secure may lose all of its capital. That's a very big misalignment of incentives. And the same on the bug bounty platform. The people who are bug hunters, they're really not trying to secure a project. They're just trying to capitalize on the bug and find the bug. You can argue that as part of that, they are securing the ecosystem, and that probably would be partially right, but they're not looking at the project with the goal of securing a system. They're looking at the project with the goal of finding one bug that they can get paid for. And so, we're trying to solve these problems in the space of how to redesign the process and build tools so that the incentives are aligned more correctly, and the proper behavior is rewarded and incorrect behavior is punished. So in a way, this is a very difficult problem to solve because it stems years back, right? We see traditional software systems are still being hacked as well. So there's really no way to guarantee whether every bug in the program has been found, or the incentives for finding the bugs aren't enough, right? So it's a very interesting and difficult problem to solve, and we're taking our stab at it.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think incentives mess up a lot of things in the space, especially when it comes to bad actors, because it's very heavily incentivized. There's more value in being a bad actor a lot of the times than working for a company and getting paid a salary, or even being part of a bug bounty. A lot of times, if they can make one change and invest time into it and make $1 million, that's a pretty good deal for them. I don't blame them. I mean,
Exactly.
if they got that skill set, that's exactly where it's going. So it's really hard, I imagine, to transition them to doing it in a malicious way and being like, okay, but help us, actually protect us.
Yeah,
That's got to be hard.
it's becoming a bit more difficult because of how do you launder that money out. Once let's say you're a bad actor and you hack something, you got these millions of dollars in your address, in your Ethereum address wallet. Now, how do you get it out? That's a different, conversation. That is becoming, as we've seen recently with U.S. Government sanctioning the Tornado Cash protocol that was being used quite extensively to launder this money out, to split it into many different addresses and then cash out. They put a a pretty heavy lid on it, even though they can't sanction the code that actually runs on the blockchain, but they can sanction individuals, they can sanction addresses. So those addresses are blacklisted from exchanges. So you can't just go and move money into an exchange and get the money out, right? So they have already sanctioned that. And, without services like these and US banks and exchanges who are agreeing to cash that money out, you're going to need to go to a different country and find a way to do that. That is kind of under wraps. So it's becoming more difficult to do that, which hopefully will help level the playing field a little bit. But bad actors are also very smart people, and they will, I'm sure, find other avenues to do this. So it's going to be an ongoing issue of trying to fix those misaligned incentives for bad actors versus good actors.
Yeah, it's a little bit of cat and mouse, isn't it? It's like you catch them on one thing and then they find another avenue, and then you catch them there and another one pops up. In a decentralized space and eventually decentralized world, it's going to be very hard to keep up that chase, I think. But it's just also going to come down to how diligent the security measures are out there and how people go about preventing that stuff as much as possible. It's never going to stop existing, in the Web 2 space. Look at any computer today. Computer comes out, hacker figures out how to get into the system. Then there's a firewall. Then they figure out how to use malware. And then there's ad blockers that prevent that. And then they come up with something else. And then there's another security measure that prevents that. So it's not like, the past industry of the internet has figured it out completely. It's still a vibrant industry, unfortunately. So it probably will be in Web3, but it's kind of interesting how that just keeps evolving.
Yeah, it's also interesting that this is, I think, directly tied to the ideology of decentralization. Because if we have a truly decentralized system that is not able to be sanctioned, right, that is doesn't have any central authority governing it, then there will be problems like this. And so it's kind of pinning the ideology of decentralization against some of these, misaligned incentive problems. And so we're trying kind of to walk at the middle ground right now, but it'll be interesting which way we sway, because, Ethereum merge that just happened with the proof of stake. A lot of people are complaining that it's a much more centralized world, right? And that's where a lot of companies like Circle or Infura, right? So Circle is the issuer of one of the biggest stable coins, and Infura is the company behind the nodes, the managed nodes on the Ethereum blockchain. So these companies have a lot of power over the operation of the blockchain. And if U.S. government comes to those companies and says, "I want you to sanction so and so," we already saw they followed through and did what the government asked. And so, if we move to that more centralized version of the ecosystem, then perhaps some of these issues will get fixed. But then, did we do any better than what we had before?
Exactly. Yeah, it makes you appreciate something like Bitcoin so much more. And we give Bitcoin so much shit for not being that great and having all these problems, being clunky, being slow, not really that easy or capable of changing it and upgrading it, but it works. It's decentralized, and no one's really ever going to be able to shut that down. I mean, the undertaking it would take to bring down Bitcoin is just not really fathomable today. Whereas there are ways to potentially get at Ethereum and influence it and affect it, and a lot of blockchains that have those components that are a bit more centralized. I think almost we need to look back at, you know, what's worked and actually try and use those models, because I think we've gotten maybe too far away from that in some ways. So the centralization model, I understand, is definitely a little scary. You can make an argue that it's necessary too in some aspects, but you know, from a security standpoint and worrying about control and anonymity and privacy, and then yeah, I think that does become a bit of a concern.
For sure.
Anyway, absolutely. We've talked about a lot of things. It's been a really good episode, man. Where can people learn about Solidified? Where can they go to, you know, reach out to you guys and get some help?
Yeah, just go on our website, solidified.io, oaksecurity.io. And, you know, if you need an audit, just fill out a form. We have a bit of a lead time, like I think most of the quality auditors in the space right now. But it's, you know, it's not unreasonable. I think it's maybe a month or two right now.
Okay, cool. What about you? Can people find you online?
I'm on LinkedIn. I used to be on a number of other social networks until I started getting impersonated quite heavily, and we actually had to hire a professional company to fix that. Um, you know, a part of the fun dealing with security when you're in security. And so I'm only on LinkedIn. You can come and connect with me. I'll be happy to have you in my network.
Absolutely. Guys, go check out Eduard on LinkedIn. Go check out Solidified and everything they're doing, especially if you need to audit your project and get some help with some security stuff. Make sure to like the video and subscribe below if you have not already. Eduard, thank you for taking the time to come on the show and elaborate on what you guys are doing and the importance of it. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. That was great.
Awesome. All right. Stay safe. Talk soon. Let's do it again soon.
Cheers.
Bye.